material that he had access to. He discussed the nouns written between the 17th and the 19th centuries. They range from the bio-bibliographical works such as the Haji Khalifa Kashf al-Zunun, then works on classification of sciences such as the Tartib al-Ulub by Muhammad Shakli-Zada, then the Kashf Istihalat al-Funun by Tanhawi, and then dictionaries of the Arabic languages such as the Taj al-Arus by Murtada al-Zabidi, and then Arabic encyclopedias, strictly speaking, like the Da'irat al-Ma'arif by Boutros al-Bustani. So the first, now I will present some of these works, just entering in the, and offering you some insights on these works. The first one is by Haji Khalifa. For a number of reasons, Haji Khalifa Kashf al-Zunun is an almost privileged starting point for a survey on the Arabic encyclopedism in the Ottoman period and beyond. This work represents one of the most comprehensive, extensive, and detailed portraits of the Arabo-Islamic knowledge that has been realized until the 18th century and was conceived outside of the religious and the strictly literary circles. Haji Khalifa attitude characterized the preparation of the Kashf al-Zunun. In several respects, his methodology can be compared to that of Ibn al-Nadim, as long as the Fihrist is considered one of the first attempts to collect and hierarchize all the existing knowledge using books in Arabic language as a selection tool. In fact, by means of all books he assessed and reviewed, Ibn al-Nadim, the son of a bookseller and himself a bookseller, thought to embody a comprehensive vision of knowledge. Not too differently, Haji Khalifa considers books as the building blocks with which he erects the highly branched structure of his work. However, as an intellectual of the Ottoman period who lived mainly in Istanbul, Arabic is no longer the privileged and exclusive tool at his disposal. His works are the output of a cosmopolitan milieu that reflects the linguistic varieties, cliché, and intellectual practices of the time. The Kashf al-Zunun sought to rebuild a kind of ideal as much as a virtual library of all existing knowledge. From the outset, and by virtue of its completeness in all the fields of the various sciences, it was considered a reference work both in the East and in the West. Throughout the 18th and the 19th centuries, the Kashf al-Zunun has been a reference work that only partially was replaced and upgraded by the following bibliographical works by al-Bustani, Sarkis, al-Zirikli, and Kahana. Then we have another important example of encyclopedism, which are the works on classification of sciences. In some respects, the traditional issue of the classification of sciences as the favored organizing principle of encyclopedia until the Mamluk period is an important issue also for the Ottoman period. For a long time, the general structure of encyclopedias was based upon rigorous divisions or classifications of sciences, taqsim or taqasim, or tasnif al-ulum, and even specific categories of sciences, asnaf al-ulum. Authors use the index, so we mentioned the FIFIs or tables of contents, and in some cases also the introduction as working tools or maps that aimed at orientating the reader and offering him a meta-reflection on knowledge, both as a whole and in its subdivisions. The prevalence of works on classification of sciences in the Ottoman period can be interpreted as one of the many signs of the central role of ilm, which had partially absorbed that of adab of previous periods, classifying and comparing transmit, so naqliya and rational aqliya sciences, religious, legal, and even linguistic sciences. It's the cornerstones of many 17th and 18th century works. The proliferation of this kind of works is easy to explain when one considers that classifying and organized sciences offered a theoretical tool up to those authors with a rigorous agenda in mind about teaching in Ottoman ulama circles and also within the madrasa system. In this perspective, many of his works can be considered as part of the main scholarly currents of these centuries. The three works, so I will focus written between the mid-18th and mid-19th century seem to be the best represent the different uses of classification of sciences as devices for connecting, organizing, hierarchizing, studying, and even criticizing knowledge. The Tartib al-Ulum by Sajjad al-Sikazan, the Kashaf Istilahat al-Ulum by Tanaha, and Abjad al-Ulum by Siddiq Hassan Khan. Although these authors lived in different times and places, they positioned their works in the wake of a well-established Arabo-Islamic tradition of encyclopedias of sciences. Unsurprisingly, the titles of the works have been more or less explicitly conformed to the pattern X of the sciences, ulum, or arts, funun. This device records the central position of authoritative knowledge in Islam and keep alive the interest for sciences classification until the end of the 19th century. Besides, they all refer to Tashkubrazadeh, Miftah Saada, and this classification. Furthermore, they cited each other's work, establishing a sort of transmission chain, including intratextual references. By means of their work, this author epitomized the emergence of new networks within the Afro-Asian madrasa system, in which the discourse of knowledge, its function, and categorization is crucial in several respects. So we go just we say a few words about these works. The first one is the attitude towards knowledge by Shaglassigada seems to be representative of mainstream 18th century Ottoman scholarship. He is certainly one of the leading figures of his age, operating mostly or near in his hometown in Maras in southern Anatolia. About 30 treatises, glosses and commentaries on specific topics, including a work on the ordering of sciences, are attributed to him. Prompted by practical purposes, he plans a work concise and accessible to students, in which the taxonomy of sciences is meant for the acquisition of knowledge in Islam. Consistent with this view, he divided the sciences into three main categories based on their usefulness and on the order to be learned. So the useful sciences, like Arabic language and Islamic law, then you have the dangerous sciences like philosophy and magic, and then sciences whose knowledge is not acquired and the lack of knowledge of which does not damage the student, like poetry and genealogy. Then the second example, not too far away in time and space, other reflections are on the methods, meanings and scopes of organizing knowledge in order to train new subjects for Islamic reformism were made. Little is known of the life of the Indian Sunni Hanafi scholar Al-Tanhawi from the northwest of Delhi, apart from the fact that he wrote the Kashaf Istilahat al-Ulum, a thesaurus of technical terms compiled from a variety of sources and aiming at Islamic scholasticism, especially in India. The arrangement is in alphabetical order, which does not provide any prior knowledge, already characterize several Arabic lexicons and bibliographical dictionaries. So we have a very strong difference from the previous one. In this regard, the Kashaf Istilahat al-Funun provides another interesting hybrid case. In the introduction, the author gives a detailed explanation of his classification system of sciences called Taqsim al-Ulum, which is clearly based on the previous more important ones. Indeed, the work has a practical purpose. Also, again, we have a lexicon of terms used in sciences of the Muslim and meant for teaching. The third example is by Siddiq Hasan Khan, the Abjad al-Ulum, by an Indian writer, statesman and poet. Siddiq Hasan Khan represents a further case of using classification of sciences that is formulated in a more specific framework if compared to the madrasa system. Being a staunch supporter of the Indian Ahli Hadith during his life, Siddiq Hasan Khan led the new scholarly network that emerged in the northern India in the middle of the 19th century and had an outstanding political career, becoming governor in Bhopal. Thanks to his position, he sponsored numerous poets and ulama, and he himself embarked on a writing career in Arabic, Persian and Urdu on a wide range of religious, technical and literary subjects. The Abjad al-Ulum is divided into three parts. The first one includes a classification of sciences, the second lists all of the Islamic sciences in alphabetical order, and the third one outlines the life and works of the most important ulama for each of the 23 macro sciences and regions, focusing in particular in Yemen, India, Anuj and Bhopal. So giving an idea of the Islam and transmission of knowledge in the East. As part of a larger cultural project aiming to leave behind the cultural stagnation which his country suffered, this work follows in the wake of a strong tradition of systematization of Islamic knowledge in which the ulama class still occupy a central place. So we switch to the next. This was about Hasan Khan. And the next one is within the Nahda movement, we have a new wave of encyclopedias. A significant sense of modernity can be found already in the work of the lexicographer Murtada al-Zabidi. Reichmuth, who is a scholar of Islamic studies specialized on this period, has portrayed the encyclopedic nature of the Taj al-Arus, which is the most important modern Arabic language dictionary. And in his view, it would reflect the reader's impression of Murtada al-Zabidi's own encyclopedic knowledge and the humanistic way in his vast network of correspondence and highly personal way of cultivating learned friendship in connotation with prophetic piety, early Islamic history, and natural sciences, which were the three main focus of Murtada al-Zabidi interest. As regards the Al-Bustani, which is our last example, his attention for Arabic language and knowledge was crucial already starting from his programmatic khutbah fi Adab al-Arab, to train the new Arab and Arabic-speaking subject Al-Bustani in the mid-19th century planned a series of cultural and political projects which focused on language, knowledge and culture. With such intention, he added that the Muhit al-Muhit, another Arabic dictionary compiled according to the modern arrangement. However, only in the Da'irat al-Ma'arif, so in the encyclopedia, Al-Bustani achieved his attempt for an epistemological shift from a perspective in which knowledge was strongly interviewed with religion to an almost secular perspective. So shifting, his idea was to shift from this ulama setting of viewing knowledge to a more secular one. This was Al-Bustani's idea. In the Da'irat al-Ma'arif, Al-Bustani clearly shows the large range that the term knowledge, both using the terms in ulum and ma'arif, had come to include in the Reform lexicon by the mid-19th century. So to arrive to some conclusions, the period between the 17th and the 19th century has witnesses a plurality of approaches towards encyclopedism as a literary phenomenon that return a vivid and varied picture. On the one hand, authors like Muhammad Siddiq Hassan place their works in continuity with the previous tradition, accentuating the religious implications of the classification and systematization of sciences in an overall approach to knowledge. On the other hand, authors like Al-Bustani place their works in an opposite perspective, possibly, but not exclusively, looking to the Western tradition and its expressions of modernity. It seems that the effects of the long wake of the so-called Sunni revival forge as well forms and functions of a certain new form of encyclopedism, mainly, but not only, envisaging the ulama class as a privileged recipient of these encyclopedias in the local as well in the trans-regional Islamic context. At the same time, in the wake of another revival or awakening, the Nahda, a different form of encyclopedism emerged as a reformulation of a religious, historical and scientific knowledge that had to look at the new Arab and Arabic-speaking subjects. In these two very different approaches, we can find two different ways of organizing knowledge by making it in line with the time. Both ways show the old order or ordering of things was somehow changing, not without contradictions and implications for future generations.
Thank you for excellent presentation, Professor Francesca. As you mentioned in your presentation, encyclopedia in Ottoman region, right? Okay, wait, in Arabic language, all of them?
Yeah, almost all of them are written in Arabic because Dick Hassan Khan also wrote a few entries in Persian and Urdu. He made references to works also in Urdu and Persian, but also Haji Khalifa made references to Turkish Ottoman and also Persian translations and works. So the idea was to include all the works written in Islamic languages, not only limiting to the Arabic ones, but also including the Turkish Ottoman. And so with the new discovery of the Americas, the old cosmographic Islamic view of the cosmos plus the world was an old-fashioned way to see all the history, and so this part was lost, and with this part also all the drawings related to this. But still you have some parts of the encyclopedias that are illustrated, and especially Al-Bustani integrated photographs with illustration. Al-Bustani is the first encyclopedia also typed. So you have, is modern in all the senses, because you have a modern bookish product, so with illustrations plus the text. Then, as far as regards the symbol of time, you don't have a specific symbol of time, also because during the Ottoman period, there is the shift is from the description of cosmos plus world plus history plus nature to the description of the various sciences. So you have a science which is dealing with time, but you don't have a representation of time as such. I mean, it is a philosophical concept within the science reflecting on the human beings in relation to time. So you don't have a specific representation of time or a science related to this. And then the impact of this kind of Arabic works on the Ottoman context was huge within the madrasa system, because these kind of works were used to teach all over the madrasa system world, so from India to Morocco, so they were absolutely very important. Of course, some of them were more important in specific regions. For example, Siddiq Hassan Khan was very important in the Indian and Indo-Persianate context, not in the West. Of course, I mean, it depends on the regions. Other scholars were more important in the context of the Anatolia and the Bilad al-Sham context. So it depends from the region of Arabics, but of course they were very important because they were a tool of teaching, reflecting on the curricula within the madrasas, and also on knowledge in itself. So the meaning of a specific Islamic knowledge to be taught and to be learned within this system, both in the practical way and as a theoretical tool. So you have both levels, the theoretical level, which is the reflection on the classification of sciences, and then the practical one, which is the organization of such curriculum into sciences or so on.
Okay, thank you for the answer, Professor Francesca. Thank you very much to all of our speakers today.